These dictators, including North Korea, are all tied together. They are all tied together. We cannot separate them. We don't pick and choose our enemies. They choose us. I often think about the blood and treasure that could have been saved from my father's generation had we simply stopped Hitler earlier. And now we are faced with a similar opportunity. As Reagan told us, quote, "We know only too well the conflict comes not when the forces of freedom are strong, but when they are weak." He was right. Our adversaries are working together to undermine our Western values and demean our democracy. We cannot be afraid at this moment in time. We cannot be afraid of our shadows. We must be strong. We have to do what's right. Evil is on the march. History is calling. And now is the time to act.
This is my video update on this Saturday afternoon, April the 20th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the big vote that is going to take place today in the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives. They will vote on the $60 billion package to Project Ukraine. I imagine that by the time this video goes up, the vote will be taking place or will have taken place, and it is pretty clear that the $60 billion package to Project Ukraine will be approved because all of the Democrats are lining up behind Republican House Speaker Johnson. All of the Democrats are lining up behind Republican House Speaker Johnson to approve the $60 billion to be sent to Project Ukraine. Johnson, the other day, he said in a statement that China, Russia, and Iran are an axis of evil, as he was trying to explain his thinking in putting the $60 billion aid package to the House for a vote. Johnson argued that the money has to be approved, has to be sent to Project Ukraine, because China, Russia, and Iran are an axis of evil.
I'm doing here what I believe to be the right thing. I think providing lethal aid to Ukraine right now is critically important. I really do. I really do believe the intel and the briefings that we've gotten that I believe Xi and Vladimir Putin and Iran really are an axis of evil. I think they're in.
If China and Russia are part of an axis of evil, then the collective West is in big trouble because they can't defeat China and Russia. China, Russia, and Iran, that's a tough enemy to have. China and Russia together in an axis of evil, that cannot be defeated, Speaker Johnson, not by the collective West. Kind of a dumb thing for Mike Johnson to say, huh? And I'm surprised that he left North Korea out of the axis of evil. North Korea is always a part of the axis of evil. How could you forget North Korea, Mike Johnson? North Korea has been part of the axis of evil since George W. Bush coined the phrase. I believe it was George W. Bush at a State of the Union where he coined the phrase axis of evil. I believe back then it was North Korea, Iraq, and I want to say Iran. So it looks like Iran is also a permanent member of the axis of evil. North Korea has been taken off the list. You're off of the axis of evil list. Oh boy. Anyway, that was Mike Johnson's statement to the media the other day. And so here we are with a vote taking place today for $60 billion to be sent to Project Ukraine. And the way this all breaks down is that 24 billion of the 60 billion will be sent to the military industrial complex, directly to the MIC, so they can replenish weapons inventories. So they need 24 billion to replace the weapons that the Russian military has destroyed. 14 billion is going to be sent to Ukraine so that Ukraine can purchase weapons from the military industrial complex to tap into existing inventories of the MIC. So another 14 billion to the MIC, but it's going to be sent to Ukraine first, and then Ukraine will send the money back to the MIC, okay, whatever. And then you have 10 billion, which is going to go to European operations, stuff like training F-16 pilots how to speak English. So you're going to have 10 billion go to those types of programs. And then you have 10 billion, which will be given to the Zelensky regime in the form of a loan. It's going to be in the form of a loan for economic assistance to the government of Ukraine to make sure that the Zelensky regime does not collapse. You don't want the Zelensky regime to collapse, do you? Even though there are reports and rumors that Yermak may be replacing Zelensky sometime in the near future, but you got to get 10 billion in economic assistance to Ukraine to make sure that salaries and stuff like that is all paid up. Salaries and kickbacks are all dished out to the various parties and oligarchs in Kiev. So that's the package. That is the 60 billion package that will be approved, most likely will be approved today. So what is this all for? What is this 60 billion for if 300 billion could not accomplish the goal of victory and regime change in Moscow, then what is 60 billion going to accomplish? Well, CIA Director Mr. Burns, he was speaking at the George Bush leadership event. That must be a fun time. The George Bush leadership event. Yep, CIA Burns was speaking at this event, and he basically said what the 60 billion is going to accomplish. It is going to prevent Ukraine from being defeated this year. It will keep Ukraine afloat until the end of the year. In other words, the 60 billion will make sure that Project Ukraine does not collapse during the 2024 election. Let's get Ukraine to November 2024. That is what Burns was basically saying at the George W. Bush leadership event. In light of this, Burns urged lawmakers to break the gridlock on aid as soon as possible. With the boost that would come from military assistance, both practically and psychologically, the Ukrainians are entirely capable of holding their own through 2024 and puncturing Putin's arrogant view that time is on his side, Burns said. However, Ukraine will face extreme difficulty if it's left out in the cold by the West, the CIA chief insisted. In his view, there is a very real risk that the Ukrainians could lose on the battlefield by the end of 2024, or at least put Moscow in a position where it could dictate terms of a political settlement. It's all about keeping Ukraine going until the elections. That's what this is all about. That's what the 60 billion is meant to do. Nothing more, nothing less. The 60 billion will not deliver victory to Ukraine or the collective West. Everyone knows that by now. And the fear in Washington, the fear in the Biden White House is that Ukraine is going to collapse before the November 2024 vote. And that would be bad news for Professor Biden. So the 60 billion is there to keep Ukraine up and running until November 2024. After November 2024, should Trump win? Well, blame the collapse on Trump, I guess. The Economist is reporting that Ukraine is digging trenches in order to keep afloat in 2024. Ukraine is digging in as the Kremlin steps up its offensive. Will it be enough? That's the question that the deep state, the permanent state, the Biden White House, that's the big question that they're asking. Will it be enough to keep them alive in 2024? To prevent defeat in 2024? Is it enough? Well, Burns is arguing that the 60 billion will be enough. The 60 billion will do the trick. They can dig their trenches, build their fortifications, purchase 14 billion in weapons, pay up the salaries of Zelensky and parliament members and government officials and military salaries. And it'll be enough to prevent a 2024 collapse. What's up, Mr. Cat? The cat is sniffing or licking ants. That's what the cat is doing. It's a good life if you're a cat in Greece. It's a really good life. So the EU and the G7, they're talking again about seizing, not freezing, the 300 billion in Russian frozen assets, legally seizing, legally stealing the 300 billion in Russian frozen assets. Reuters ran an article yesterday with the title, G7 eyeing using frozen Russian assets as collateral for Ukraine loans, EU official says. So we're back to the idea of stealing the Russian frozen assets and using the frozen assets as collateral to loan to Ukraine. We're back to this idea. They really want to get their hands on the 300 billion. The IMF, they warned the EU and the G7. They didn't warn them not to steal the frozen assets. What the IMF warned is if you are going to steal the frozen assets, the 300 billion, just make sure you do it in a way that looks legal, in a way that doesn't break the rules, because as the IMF, we don't want to damage the collective West financial architecture, the financial system. That was the warning from the IMF. If you're going to steal the money, just make sure it's legal. Just make sure you do it in a legal way. So they're talking again about collateral. That's the way that the EU and the G7, that's how they're thinking of doing this thing, of stealing these assets. Use the assets as collateral for a loan, another loan to Ukraine. Not a $10 billion loan. We're talking about a $300 billion loan. Why not? You have 300 billion in Russian assets as collateral, so all is good, right? All is good to loan Ukraine $300 billion. They're good for it. Ukraine is good for it. It's beyond stupid. It is beyond stupid. Just the fact that they talk about stealing these frozen assets nonstop, and they hatch all of these plans and schemes to make it legal, to make the theft legal. That's damaging the collective West financial system already. I mean, stop talking about it. You're freaking people out. You're spooking. You're spooking investors and oligarchs in other countries that are already invested or want to invest in Europe or the United States. Stop talking about it. But they can't stop. They can't stop discussing the $300 billion in frozen assets. So you know what I say? My thinking is just take the money. Just take the money. People will have more respect for you. G7, Europe, Biden White House, they'll have a lot more respect for you if you're honest. If you're honest and just come out and say, yeah, we're going to steal the money. We're going to take the $300 billion because that's the way we roll. And 10% for the big guy. You can't forget the 10% for the big guy. Sometimes I forget to mention the 10% for the big guy. Can never forget the 10% for the big guy. So Viktor Orban, he was speaking to Fidesz party members yesterday, and he said that the EU is in a war state of mind. They're not in a New York state of mind. They're in a war state of mind. And Orban said that Europe is one step away from sending troops to Ukraine because of the sunk cost fallacy. Orban basically said that Europe has invested so much into Project Ukraine, they can't admit that it's not working out. They can't admit that they are defeated. And so the only option for Europe is more war. Let me see if I could find you some quotes from Orban. The mood of EU leaders is one of war, Orban told a gathering of his Fidesz party ahead of the EU Parliament elections. There is a pro-war majority in Brussels today, he said, adding that the bloc's politics are dominated by the logic of war. Despite all the money and weapons, the situation is not improving for Kiev. In fact, it is getting worse. We are one step away from the West sending troops to Ukraine, Orban warned. This is a vortex of war that can drag Europe into its depths. Brussels is playing with fire. That doesn't sound too good. That does not sound good at all. Anyway, you know, Orban, he's been warning Europe for the last 2 years, but they're not listening to Orban. Not only do they not listen to Orban, they go after Orban. They try to regime change Orban. All right, let's make today's video a short video, and let's do a couple of clown worlds. And let's start things off with yesterday's story about the assassination plot that was foiled by Poland. The foiled plot to delete Zelensky, that the Polish authorities foiled the deletion of Zelensky. So the person that they have in custody goes by the name of Pavel K. And in my video yesterday, I said that, you know, if I was Zelensky, the fact that this story is coming out there and they're talking about this assassination plot, I would be more worried about the collective West than I would about Russia, because Russia is incentivized to keep Zelensky alive. While the collective West, well, your term is expiring in May, and a lot of people are talking up the leadership brilliance of Yermak. I don't know. I don't know. So my thinking was for them to put out a story like this about a Russian plot to take out Zelensky in Poland, my thinking is that they're trying to build the narrative of, maybe they're trying to build the narrative of what might come in the next couple of months. And I'm not the only one that is thinking like that. Dmitry Medvedev, he is also suggesting that Zelensky should be more worried about the collective West than he should of Russia. Medvedev said, an attempt on the life of the chief Banderite Zelensky in Poland, that is truly serious. It may be the first piece of evidence that people in the West have made a decision to liquidate him. Be afraid, clown. Be afraid, clown. That is coming from Dmitry Medvedev. So Mark Rutte, he was in a debate in The Hague the other day, and this story was sent to me by a viewer from the Netherlands, and Rutte was talking about Putin. And in his statement at The Hague, Rutte said that Putin is not so smart and not so strong. That's right. That is what Rutte told people at The Hague. Let's see here. I have the translation sent to me by the viewer. I follow it, but the question is only about what? But don't overestimate Putin. Mentally, I have spoken to the man a lot. That is not a strong man. Really not. That is not a strong guy. And that is not someone we, well as a person, we have to be terribly afraid of. But of course, he has the resources that Russia offers him to do this. But as a person, he is not a strong personality. That's how the EU political class think. That's how the Klaus Schwab golden boy, the WEF elite think. Because Mark Rutte, he is Klaus Schwab's golden boy. Anyway, according to Rutte, Putin is not smart and not strong. Because Rutte is smart and strong, right? Rutte is very smart, very strong. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. Let's see here. And Putin, he has botched a whole bunch of poison attempts and sabotage attempts and blowing up pipelines. So, maybe Rutte is right. I don't know. But on the flip side, Putin is going to conquer all of Europe. And he controls Trump. And he controls the election system in the United States. Actually, he controls the election systems in all of the collective West. I don't know. I'm confused. I'm just confused about Putin. It's all so confusing. My head hurts. But anyway, that's the video. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Pick up some limited edition merch. The link is in the description box down below. Take care.